stay. I'm blue without your face. But what can I do? 'Cause I'm just a sinking ship, and you're just a pair of lips that I've lost in the moment. All I want is for you to come back. Now I'm caught in the middle of life, and I need.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, your brother, and your friend Rashid. And right now, we're experiencing a little bad weather here, so it may be a little delay in the movement on the screen or whatever. But I want you to look past that. We have with us today, and I have to bring in quickly because I've been wanting to interview the Colonel for the longest, Colonel Karen Kwiakowski. I always mess up your name. I'm so sorry that I mess up your name.
It's no problem. Kwiatkowski.
All right. I want to, Colonel. I've been wanting to ask you this. I see you on Judge Nap all the time, and I wanted to ask you, what is going on with the foreign policy of the United States? Because it seems like those in charge are doing more damage to the U.S. Republic and the U.S. empire than they are doing aid to it. It seems like everything that they're doing is to damage the empire and the republic instead of to stave off certain destruction.
Yeah, it does seem like that. It does seem like that. The things that they're doing are actually hurting America, whether that's America like the nation, or America the empire. Both of those entities, whichever one you think is better or whatever one you identify with, are both being harmed by the policies that are being pursued out of Washington. And they're really, Trump is a different kind of guy. Like we know, he's different. And I think that's why he was elected, and he has kind of a kind of a character that you can't stop watching him. It's like it's a spectacle almost. But his policies have, we have a trajectory of foreign policy and really domestic policy too, which hasn't really changed much for a really long time. I would say since the second half of Reagan's term, and Herbert Walker Bush probably running it. Then you had Herbert Walker Bush, Clinton. We thought, well, Clinton's different, that's different, but really it wasn't. Nothing was different. It was all the same, seeking of, beefing up the empire, expanding the empire in the face of the end of the Soviet Union, of course, selling arms to everybody, everywhere, including arms that don't work very well. This is the other thing. Our empire is going along the same old for 45 years. And we wake up one morning, I don't know, maybe last year, and we discover that Russia has hypersonic missiles. We can't make them. We don't even know how to make them, much less produce them. So you've got that. You've got all kinds of other technology where the rest of the world has not just caught up with what the old American empire had to offer. They have exceeded it. They have done it faster, better, and cheaper than we can do. So, then you bring Trump online. He's like, well, I want to rebuild America. I want to make America great again. Well, you really can't do that. We are so far behind that what we ought to do, foreign policy and domestic policy, is say, if we're a republic, what does a republic look like? Let's start acting like that. If we have a constitution, why don't we start honoring that? If we don't want to be an empire, because really that's not what we should be, then why don't we stop being an empire? But they can't stop. They cannot stop. They're locked in. And I think that's what you're talking about. We're locked into a trajectory that is not very good. And it's not just one step forward, two steps back. It's one step forward, 10 steps back. That's where we are right now in our foreign policy. I think. I mean, that's my opinion.
And it seems to me strange that the very nations that the United States need to buy the debt to keep financing the government are the very nations that they keep sanctioning and antagonizing and constantly provoking through war games. And how is that even sound or rational judgment from so-called learned leaders?
Well, they're not that learned. I think that's something that all Americans are understanding. We're led by people that they know actually a lot less than we do about a lot of the things that they are paid to know about. We're I'm not a professional. I learn this stuff by reading it. I ask questions. I do a little bit of research, not even that much, and I know more than most of the people running our government. Certainly more than the people in Congress. They don't know. They don't know what they don't know. They don't care to learn it. They're just riding high on the rape. And as far as I'm concerned, that's what the government has been doing to this country. They're gathering up. They've raped it of its really good production and wealth and the quality of life that we like to think is American. But they're also doing it around the world. They're gathering up resources in this effort, and like you said about the money, in this effort to keep the dollar as the reserve currency, to keep the world purchasing our debt. The world is not stupid. Our leaders are stupid. We know more than our leaders do, but the rest of the world also does. We don't think the rest of the world knows anything. The rest of the world's been watching this for decades, and they're like, hey, man, we actually hold the cards here. We don't have to buy American debt, particularly when America's future isn't looking like they're going to pay off very well. And really just the market. I mean, if you're going to offer, I don't know what the bond rate is, but it's not a high interest rate. It doesn't match the risk. So the normal market is going to say, I don't want that. I don't want that. Well, now what is America going to do? Can't sell their debt. They're just going to roll money. They're going to print it. And what does that do? Continues the downward trajectory of not just our quality of life, but our capability to run a country that adheres to the ideals. We like to think we're free. We like to think we're prosperous. Well, guess what? You might check those two things off, because when they start rolling the money, we get hyperinflation, war, which usually what follows. We're not free and we're not prosperous. And I don't even know if most Americans alive today are in any way, shape, or form prepared for what could definitely be coming.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking, as you were talking, I was thinking about the unbridled debt burden that the United States, the on-book debt burden and the off-book debt burden that the United States has. I remember about 10 years ago, a professor of economics, last name, at this time he said the United States had $222 trillion of debt off book. And he said, and now when we look at it, he said unfunded liabilities and everything like that. And that was 10 or 15 years ago. And now the barometers are much worse than that. How can Donald Trump or Barack Obama or Joe Biden or whomsoever is in the White House believe that they can continue to kick this debt burden down the road through provocations, war, and threat? Because what it seems to be is that they're trying to hold the barrel of a gun to the head of the entire world to continue to absorb the U.S.'s debt so that the United States can live, above its means while the entire world funds its lifestyle.
Yeah, well, that's definitely what they're trying to do. And also, if you think of the U.S. as an empire, and I don't mean empire in a bad way, it's just a fact. This is an organization of strong militaristic governments that expand. Well, that's what we have been. So we're an empire. But when you look at the life cycle of empire, we're at the end of it. And so what happens at the end of empires? Well, they run up huge debt that they do not pay. And don't kid yourself. Nobody should, we like to not think about 150 or 220 trillion in unfunded liabilities, which is money, a lot of it's owed or expected to be returned to the people of this country. They think, well, we help the government. They said they would help us, but they're lying. Okay, government's lying about that. In fact, Ron Paul wrote a great piece the other day. Government lies about everything. It does, and that's the starting point. It does lie, but these trillions of dollars, we can't wrap our head around how much that is, but it's never going to be paid back. Okay, it is going to be written down. Now, you could do it in an organized way if they had any gumption, if they had any moral character. They would say, okay, we got ourselves in this hole. We need to figure out which debts we can write down. We have to cut spending. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to cut spending because it hurts the people right now. And it's like, well, how am I supposed to live if I don't get what this or that? But they have to cut spending, and they have to write down a lot of the bad debt. And a lot of this debt really could be written down, just like we would do. Like, if we overdid our credit card, to an amazing amount. Let's say you have credit card debt that's like 2 years of your salary. No way in heck you're ever gonna pay it back. Well, what happens? We negotiate. First off, we stop paying, and then we get in a negotiation and we write it down. And the person or the companies who lent us that money take the loss because they say, well, you know what? We should have known better. And hey, it happens. Sometimes you got to bite you got to take the loss. And so a lot of the debtors, a lot of the people that have loaned our government money, the countries, the bond holders, even people with expecting entitlements and getting entitlements, really, we're getting them right now. We are going to have to forgive some of this debt. It's going to get done for us. But government doesn't want to do that, because what happens when you have to beg off the credit card companies and just give them a penny on the dollar? Well, they're not going to give you any more money. You're done. Okay, you're done. You're no more credit for you. And that's what our government can't live on. They borrow just to exist. I think we're borrowing $1 trillion, or printing $1 trillion a quarter. I think it's almost 3.5 or 4 trillion a year. We're blowing through that we're not bringing in from revenues. Now, Trump talks about his tariffs. Oh, we had a good tariff month. Well, we'll watch that as it goes through and see if that continues, because tariffs are anti-free trade. Anti-free trade is anti-prosperity. So it's not a good idea. Anyway, the debt's going to go away. It's going to get written down. Will it go away in a smooth, planned way, or will it go away in a crisis? And then the best thing that empires and totalitarian governments, which we kind of were leaning in that way, the best way they do to get rid of their debt is they get in a big war. Because in a war, you can legitimately tell your people, the whole population, that you just got to suck it up, because it's a life, we're at risk here. There's no need for any wars. There's no need for any. I can't think of a single war on the planet right now that there is a need for, but governments need them. Governments need them to enforce their power, ensure they stay on top politically, and they need them sometimes to eliminate their debt and have an excuse for it. Because if you just blew up a lot of credit and you couldn't pay it, that's kind of your fault. You made some bad choices and you lied to the credit card companies or whatever. That's kind of on you, right? You could say that. With a war, it's the same. That's how governments say, well, it wasn't my fault. There was a war. We had no choice. We had to print money. And, we did that in the War of Independence, the Continentals. Remember the printed paper that they used to pay their war bills when we did the fought against Britain the first time. And that was worthless paper. And so we've been through worthless paper. Also, I don't know if people remember what Lincoln did to fund a war, because you got to fund a war, right? Got to have a war and got to pay for it. And nobody wants to really pay for it. They want to print money. So he proposed, when the Northern banks, who actually wanted the Civil War, but they didn't want to loan the government the kind of money Lincoln wanted. So Lincoln said, well, if you're not going to do it, I'm just going to print my own money, greenbacks. And that's what they were called, greenbacks. And he printed some, but it was enough pressure putting that bad paper, worthless money in the system that the banks then backed him and gave him, the Northern banks backed him and gave him the money to prosecute that war, which in my opinion wasn't necessary, but certainly didn't need to last for 4 years, but it did. And wars, who was it that said war is the health of the state? They need war. War is the leverage that the state has against its own people. it's ugly. And so we see lots of wars in the world. And then Trump, I'm a peacemaker. I'm a peacemaker. I don't know. you know, the way he spends money, sitting on top of this fading American empire, he needs a war. He's going to need one. Or is he going to stand up and say, well, we're defaulting on all the money we've printed? And he's going to tell the American people, yeah, I told you it was going to get better. Actually, it's going to get a lot worse for about 50 years. He's not going to do that. He's not that kind of person. Not at all. He got mad. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, which has bad data for 40 years. And then, he says, well, you're fired. I want a guy in there who's going to give me the data I want to see. Come on. That's a sign of an empire in distress.
So do you think, in the last few minutes that we have together, do you think that something will come out of the discussions in Alaska? Because it seems like to me that Vladimir Putin and Russia holds all of the cards, and it seems like that this was thrown together out of desperation by the Trump administration.
Yeah, well, Putin holds the cards on the ground militarily. And also, NATO is a mess. I mean, their economies are screwed up. They've been bullied by Trump into spending more for their, defense. It's a bad situation there. So all the cards are in the Russian hands, which is Putin's hands. But nobody wants war. Putin doesn't want war either. I mean, honestly, his own people in Russia, they were mad that he didn't invade Ukraine like in 2015, 2016, when the Minsk Accords were, totally not being honored. So he holds the cards, but then you have to think about what's in Trump's head, right? Because Trump always has to be seen as, doing something. I mean, he claimed that he settled the Pakistan-India skirmish. He settled Armenia, Azerbaijan. He ended a 12-day war that he started, but he ended. So I think it's interesting to see what Trump thinks he can take from it, because obviously Trump has a plan to make himself look good as a result of this. And I don't know, I really don't know what his plan is. It would be nice if they cut a deal and then presented it to NATO and Zelensky as a done deal. That's probably not going to happen. So, it's kind of like a play that we're watching, and we don't really know. We haven't seen it before yet. We've seen similar plays, but we haven't seen this one yet. So it's hard to say. But Trump obviously thinks he's getting something out of it. And then you have to look at what Trump values. Trump values looking like a big old winner. He wants to be a winner all the time. So how can Trump turn this into a win? Peace is probably the only way. He's probably going to, I think they're going to come away with something that they say, look, this is it. We're done. I would like to think that they could do peace, but there's a lot of people that look at Putin traveling to Anchorage. It's dangerous in some ways, because think about all the lies that our government tells. Think about all the regime changes that our government is still involved in. What bigger feather in Trump's hat after he decimated the Iranian nuclear facility? What if he just, what if he waxed Putin, right? We did that. Yeah, we did that. I mean, could we rule that out? I don't know. I'm watching it closely. I don't know. I can't. Trump is he's like a Roman emperor in the end of Rome. He's like a really bad emperor, one who has peccadilloes and strange relationships and strange objectives that the people in the empire don't understand. That's how I see Trump. And I like a lot of things. I mean, I'm not against him. I don't hate him or anything, but he definitely fits the bill for an emperor at the end of an empire.
But if that were to happen on U.S. soil, don't you think within minutes Russia will retaliate with a nuclear strike on the United States, decimating the United States?
I think if they did the dead hand thing, if they did a retaliatory thing with nukes, it would probably not be the whole of the United States. And what it would do instantly is eliminate the federal debt. If you really had to pay back $220 trillion or 40 something $trillion in current debt, if you really had to restart the currency from scratch, eliminate debt, have like a debt jubilee, if you really wanted to do that, a nuclear war would do it. It would do it. So I obviously am opposed to that. I hope it doesn't happen, but that's what, that is one of the things that can eliminate that kind of and give you this restart. And I don't think Trump wants that. So hopefully none of that will happen. But we are led by people who, you and I are talking, and your audience is listening and commenting, I'm sure. And we know more about how to solve these problems than our own government does. And this is a shame. So the takeaway from it is we owe that government nothing. We owe ourselves and our communities everything. And that's how we're going to live through this, since we're not in political power. We can't, but we know in our minds, we are actually better qualified to make some of these decisions and end these wars than the people we've elected to do it for us. Oh, there's a question about why Trump doesn't end the Fed. He likes the printing of the money. That's why he doesn't end the Fed. The Fed works for
my question, because I know you're busy, is that
I can't hear.
Here we are. Okay. We're having bad problems. We're having a storm.
Oh, okay.
Storm out here, so I want everybody to know that there's bad weather going on right now out here. So I'll repeat. Did you hear me?
No. Can you say that again?
Hold on. All right, we're back. I'm sorry. Well, like I said, I don't know if you heard me, but real bad weather right now. There's a lightning storm going on right now, so we're in and out. But last question is, since the U.S. needs debt to go away, do you think we're going to war with China?
If our government has its way, then they will take us to war with China, or at least multiple proxy wars, something to feed the military-industrial machine, to feed that part of the economy, which is totally created and subsidized by the taxpayer. It's not free market. If we wanted, we have a free market in defense. That's privately owned weapons, which are huge in this country, and that's great. But the military systems that we make, that's all government subsidized, not free market. And they need customers, and you create customers by starting wars and facilitating wars and prolonging wars, which is what we've been doing for quite a long time. So yeah, they want that. They want that in the Pacific. They do. Very expensive for us to operate in the Pacific too. So that's a good thing for government. They go, oh yeah, long logistic tail, lots of, we need more ships. We need more long haul airplanes and everything else you can possibly imagine. We've got to spend on this because, boy, that war with China, that's going to cost us. Yeah, they want that. They want that. If we don't change our ways, we'll end up with, about 4 or 5 Ukraines around China, proxy wars that we talk about, and I want to say this too about this Friday meeting. Trump's acting like when he speaks to Putin, he's acting like I'm just an objective, independent party here. We're freaking at war with Russia. That's what we're doing. billions and billions and billions of dollars of war. Our intel people are advising them. Our surveillance systems are targeting for the Ukrainians. We are consulting at every level. We are at war with Russia, but Trump wants to say, oh, no, we're not. We're not. So when we go to war with China, it may be to say, oh, we're not really at war with China, but we will be. They need it. They need it. We have to change the system. It's an empire, and we were told we were getting a republic. We lost it. We need to get it back. I have no problems with that. We should get that republic back.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're having the connections, so I'm glad we got the last question in. And I want to thank you so much for joining us on the program. We got to have you back on, especially if it's better weather out here, because I mean, it's thundering real bad and it's lightning.
Well, I'm glad I could do it.
Thank you so much, Colonel, and be blessed and be safe. Thank you so much.
You too, Rashid. See you next time.
All right, bye-bye. Everybody, thank you for joining us on another edition of the most powerful platform for truth. I want to say this as we go off. Remember to do right by others, not because there's some material gain in it or because there's some accolades behind it, but do right by others because it's the right, the humane, and the godly thing to do. Because even when no one else is watching, remember God Almighty is watching. He may sit high, but he looks low, as my mother always said. And know that I love each and every one of you who loves truth. But know that the love that I have for you will always pale in comparison to the love that God has for you. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody. Thank you all for joining me. We're out of here. Peace. Good day.
Walk away. That was my first and last mistake. I'm blue without your face. But what can I do? 'Cause I'm just a sinking ship, and you're just a pair of lips that I've lost.